Hi, welcome back. I'm Rob Jellesed with Coldwell Banker Pacwest Realty in Medford, Oregon, and I'm here with Renee Nelson, who is our resident expert in Pacwest commercial real estate here in Eugene, Oregon. Hi, Renee. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, Rob, I think we should talk about Zillow and then talk about the listing process, because I know you've mentioned that you've had a lot of sellers that have called and said, hey, my house is worth $600,000 per Zillow, where in reality it's not worth that based on market comparables. Right. So how do you look at that?
Well, I look at Zillow as being kind of a very large pool of information that's been kind of drizzled down into one area, but unfortunately their estimates don't take into account the individuality of the properties that we're looking at. They're kind of a wide vanilla landscape, whereas we're looking at very specific properties with specific owners, specific amenities, and specific attributes. And Zillow doesn't take into account in those estimates, I believe, the uniqueness of that individual property.
And do you find that Zillow overestimates value, or how do you see it in comparison to other properties that have sold that then become a true comparable to a property that somebody may want to sell?
Well, it really depends. The answer is sometimes it overestimates, sometimes it underestimates. But in either case, it creates the wrong expectation a lot of times in the seller on what the value of their property is. And what's really great is if it underestimates the value of the property, you can go back and make a compelling presentation to a potential seller about the value of their property. When Zillow overestimates it, it's very hard to bring that seller back to the realistic price comparatives in the inventory that they're going to be competing in that market.
Mm-hmm. And how do you come up with establishing a value if somebody wants to sell?
It's a very meticulous process I go through, because what I really want to do is when I sit across the table from a seller, I want to speak knowledgeably and informally and confidently that this property is worth this much. And it's not necessarily the amount it's not the property itself. Sometimes it's the inventory that you're comparing it to and then selling it to. And also it depends on how many days on the market you want it to be. I mean, we could list your property on whatever price you want to sell it for, but it may never sell. It may be on the market for 300 or 400 days. If you want to let it sit there for that long, yeah, we can probably maybe find a willing buyer at that price, but it might be like finding a needle in a haystack.
Mm-hmm. And what's the issue with having a property set on the market? I've heard it become shop worn. Talk to me about that. What does that mean?
Well, there's a lot of problems when it sits on the market for a long time. Number one is the money that you want to use that from selling that is locked up in that property itself, so you're kind of stuck until that property sells. Secondly, it becomes kind of stale on the market because people come back periodically, look on the market for a property, they see your property there, it hasn't sold, there's something, they perceive it being something wrong with the property. And so it's very important that we look at time on market as well as the price we want to sell it for.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And in your opinion, what are some of the things that a seller should do to get a property ready for sale?
Well, I'll walk through it with them, and my point is to share the property experience through the buyer's eyes. I pretend to be a buyer, and I go through and I walk through that house from a buyer's perspective, and they may not like some of the things that I say, but unfortunately I'll say them out loud, whereas a buyer walking through the property itself you may never know that buyer's been thinking those things. My goal is to make that property presentable to a buyer, not presentable to the seller who's selling it, but presentable to the buyer who wants to purchase it, because that's what really we're all after. That we're all after that same goal.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And what are some other important things that a seller should consider?
Well, they should consider basically what they're going to do with that money when they sell their house. I mean, are they going to reinvest it? Are they going to buy another house? Are they going to step to a bigger house? Are they going to step down to a smaller house? All those kinds of considerations going forward as to what you're going to do with those funds and how you're going to utilize those funds is a really important thing. Just putting it in the bank isn't necessarily the end goal of the selling experience. Is what are you going to do with those funds after you've made that transaction?
That makes sense. And in your opinion, what do most sellers regret? I know a lot of sellers have a remorse if they get an offer quick They
Yeah.
think, oh, I left money on the table.
Yeah.
Where I look at it that you priced it right instead.
Right. I think the regret is, did I sell it for less than what it was worth? And frankly, you know, the other regret I hear is I'm going to get a lot of lowball, people wanting to lowball me on my beautiful piece of property, and they're going to try to get it from me at a very low cost. Those are the two things, all revolving around sale. Did I sell it for too less? Did I not sell it for enough, or did I just take the first offer without considering other offers? It's basically, that's the insecurities that most sellers have.
And how do you overcome those?
Well, basically, every offer is worth pursuing. So if we get a low ball, we'll counter. Or if it's really low, we'll just reject it and we'll move on. We just make sure that we've looked at the offer, we've left the offer window open. If we get a backup offer, that kind of reinforces that we're probably in the right spot. If we get no offers at all when we're online for maybe 30 or 60 days, depending on the time of year and the seasonality, we might want to refresh the price and drop it a little bit just to get some more interest in it. But there are always something we can do to make sure that that property is continually on the market in a very positive way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, what's the next topic that you want to talk about?
Well, the next topic I want to talk about is, what do you look for when you want to sell your house? What do you want to look for when you're looking to hire a professional real estate agent to sell your property?
I think that's a great idea.
Hi, I'm Rob Jellesed of Coldwell Banker Pacwest Realty in Medford, Oregon, and this is my YouTube channel. I hope you find the content on here entertaining, informative, and enjoyable, and somewhat comical. Thank you for watching.